Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what area of the world you're in. My name is Heather Leeson. I'm with Open Knowledge Foundation, and today I'm here with Marika Guy and Altavia Ritter, and we're going to talk a little bit about open education and what open data and open education, how those two things work together. So Marika Guy is an open education community manager at Open Knowledge Foundation, and Octavio Ritter is an open data researcher in Brazil. So good morning, and Marika, I understand you're in London.
Yes, good afternoon from London.
Great, great. So just to give everybody an understanding of what we're going to be doing and how the format's going to work today, we'll start off with Mariki. Who's going to give us an overview about open education and the working group that happens at Open Knowledge and some of the things happening around the world. And then Otavia is going to give us a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the kind of topics related to open education. And we'll certainly be here for answering any questions that you have. But with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Mariki. Good morning, and please go ahead.
Hi, so I'm Marika Guy. I'm from the Open Education Working Group at Open Knowledge, and the question we're going to have a think about today is what has open data got to do with education? So thanks very much to Heather for inviting us along to the community session. I'm really excited to be talking to you about this today. I'd start off by saying I think the answer is potentially a huge amount. Open data has got a huge amount to do with education, but we didn't want to just answer it like that, and hopefully you're going to hang around and hear more of our insights and thoughts and share your own later on in the session as well. So I am the community coordinator on the Open Education Working Group, but I also work on another project called Linked Up, which is about linking web data for education. And that's a project where we run a series of competitions and get people to design prototypes and apps using open data in education. So if you're interested in that, please do get in touch with me. So the Open Education Working Group has been around for coming up, well, not quite a year now. We started off at OKCon, and we felt that there was a bit of a gap in the open knowledge market. There wasn't a working group in this space, and we were really keen to set up a group that brought together people interested in lots of different areas of open education. So the goal is to initiate global, cross-sector and cross-domain activity. So you'll see what I mean in a minute, but we're trying to bring different groups together that weren't originally talking to each other. And we've now actually got two regional groups in Belgium and Finland. They both have an open education working group, which is great stuff. And hopefully there'll be more set up in the future. So this picture is of what I call the open education pie, but I just see these different facets of open education. So for example, at the top, sort of to the side, we've got children working in Africa using the One Laptop Per Child initiative, and they are having sort of new ways of working. But there's also whole new learning and teaching practices and the flipped classroom idea, which has been hugely successful. Then at the top there we have changing policy, open policy work. So for example, the stuff that Creative Commons are doing in that space. Then there's OER, open education resources, and searching and finding and making content available openly. We've got the Mozilla Open Badges there, physical open badges, but they do obviously online stuff, and it's all about open accreditation and different ways of sort of understanding and accrediting and marking work and coursework. Creative Commons licensing, so about openly licensing materials, and then tools like, I think this is the Pundits tool from Open Glam, open source tools and how they can be used in education. And then we have open data, and so we're thinking about various different things when we talk about open data in education, but one example is open data that comes out of education institutions themselves, but there is many types of data that can be used in an educational way. So to carry on about our working group, we have a great advisory board. We have Corinne Bezuidenhout, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Shuttleworth Foundation. We have Lorna Campbell, and she works for CETUS, the Centre for Education Technology and Interoperability Standards here in the UK. Cable Green, he's the Director of Global Learning at Creative Commons. Jonas Makinen, he's a Finnish maths teacher who's doing some really exciting stuff around open textbooks. So a real kind of practitioner, someone doing stuff on the ground there. Bernard Nikobiatsky, difficult saying that one, and the initiator of the Open Education Rwanda Network. And finally, Raina Strambliowska, another tricky name, but some of you in the open knowledge community may know her from the Open MENA work that she does. So we have a great advisory board that are out there advocating what we do within the working group. And we've started to do some real concrete stuff now. So some of our activities are around community building, making contact, getting people from all around the world to talk to each other. We were finding that people were talking, but very much in their own countries, in their own spaces. So we're hopefully making those links across different places. We worked on things like creating the Open Education Timeline, an interactive tool that sort of maps the timeline. We've got a session running at OK Festival in July, which is called the Open Education Smorgasbord. And that's looking, we're having various different tables and getting people to try out different open education activities. Support for areas such as standards and work. Also looking at things which are very relevant to the group because of our cross-cultural, cross-country focus. We have stuff around open education resources and small languages, so we want to do more in that space. And talking of language, we're just generally interested in open education language and making it more appropriate and accessible to different areas. So, for example, people like teachers who aren't so aware of open education, and supporting other activities that are going on. And I've already mentioned the local groups there. One of the key things that we've started working on is an open education handbook. This is actually for the Linked Up project, but this is a collaboratively written living web document. And the idea is that anybody can contribute to it and anybody can come and have a look at it and see areas that are missing. The coverage is very broad. We're currently looking at how we can make it relevant for different areas and different people. So giving different sort of perspectives on it and maybe having some sort of front end for it. It currently sits in BookType, which is an open source book editing software. And we've been lucky enough to have members of the community involved actually translating it into Portuguese, which was fantastic. A Brazilian group did that. We also have some of the handbook already available as slides on SlideWiki. So lots of potentially that can be done with the handbook. And here's some examples of book sprints that we ran to get some content for the handbook. But it's very much, the working group is very much about building community, about getting people working together who didn't necessarily work together before. If you are interested in the working group, it would be fantastic if you are. We're happy to bring in people from any walks of life. We're especially people who are actually practitioners and doing this stuff already. We have a fantastic mailing list, which is quite active, and we have like a Friday chat where we have a discussion topic, and that's really stepping up now. People are starting to come forward, and we're having a lot more great discussion. We have a Twitter list where we just share resources and share different things that are happening. Website and blog, and on our blog we actually have a series of posts from around the world looking at open education from different places. The handbook I've already mentioned. We also have working group calls. So our next one is on Tuesday the 8th of July, and they are an opportunity for people to come along and introduce themselves and get to know people within the working group. And then I mentioned already the session that we're running at OK Festival. And if you're interested in any of this, please do get in touch with me. It'd be great to hear from you. One of the things that the Open Education Working Group is really, really interested in how open data fits into the whole open education spectrum. Obviously from an open knowledge perspective, but I think it's an area that's really starting to be a lot more activity in this space. So I just wanted to share with you a quote from David Lassner from the University of Hawaii. He picks up some interesting points here. I think he talks about how data is becoming a lens, a powerful lens, and how to understand what we are doing. So it's a way for us to reflect on what is happening within our institution, what is happening online and in different spaces. And also once this reflection allows us to make things better, to make activity better. So he talks about using data to understand deeper correlations and causality. And I think as open data advocates will know, it's the potential of this data and realising it that's really the great opportunity here. So within the project, the Linked Up project, and within the working group, we use terms like open education data and open educational data and open data in education fairly loosely, partly because these terms are pretty ill-defined. And I think when I think about open educational data, it could be referring, as I mentioned earlier, specifically to the open data that comes out of an institution, so a physical institution, but it could also be used more widely to anything that could be useful for the goal of education. So there's still some work to be done thinking at how these terms all fit together. I can see a Venn diagram on the horizon. So what exactly are we talking about? What type of data are we talking about? I've given some different varieties here, but the list is endless, and you will see from the URLs at the bottom of the page that there's further information on this, and there's sections in the handbook on this. But so we might think about student data, so anything produced by students, stuff around their grades, their skills, their attendance, their homework. Course data, really key area, curriculum, syllabus data, VLE data, number of textbooks, those type of things. Then institution data, so location data about where buildings are situated, infrastructure data, power consumption data. There's something that came up at the Making It Matter workshop that we ran recently, which was looking about open and linked data in the education space, but very much at the developing world angle. And some institutions out there don't even, some people really need to get data on whether there is electricity at different buildings, and those kind of data sets sometimes don't even exist, but they're very key to what people can do within these institutions. So you might talk about teachers' names, contract dropout rate, costs, here sponsorship, cost per pupil, those type of things, ratio of students to teachers, lots of really interesting stuff that could come out of institutional data. And then user-generated data, so learning analytics, assessments, performance data, job placement data, those type of things. And finally, policy and government data. So here much more to do with money and spending and transparency around these budgets and that type of thing, participation data. I wanted to share with you an example from the UK. There was a report that was carried out by the Open Public Service Network. I think the RSA, Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufacturers and Commerce, carried it out. And it was looking into the release of data sets within the UK and how they were being used and whether there should be more data sets released. And I think there is a tendency to think that some of this work is just purely about parent choice about where their students go to school or something around that. And I think that that actually there's a lot more to it than that. And this report highlighted it. It says it talks about school choice, and then it says it's equally as important as contextual information for parents and children wanting to understand their own or their children's educational progress. So I think here we're thinking about how each child can do the best that they can. So stuff around ability and making the best of resources and those type of areas. So it really goes beyond just parents making choices, I think. So how can we use this data? What kind of opportunities are there to use this data? And I think there are many, many opportunities. There are, looking at students, schools and the government, there's potentially great opportunities for each. So maybe creation of new tools, new ways to analyse and access data. So maps, for example, of things like disabled access to buildings, tools for analysing different disciplines, ways to enrich the resources and making them easier to share and personalise them, allowing students to explore different resources and make ultimately informed choices. Schools themselves, things like learning analytics data, now there are great opportunities to realise when students might potentially be about to drop out of the university or school and offer them more support. And there are ways we can pinpoint those type of things happening. But improving efficiencies is very key. So things like library data, making good decisions about what books should be in the library and those type of things. And benchmarking again. And for governments, it can really lead to huge amounts of change and transparency and ultimately educational reform. And I think Octavio will talk more about that. I have some case studies. I won't spend too much time on these, but there are many more details on the Open Education Working Group and available about these. So Tanzania Shule, they allowed they had data from the government which allowed them to compare various different exam results across different regions of Tanzania and follow trends over time, which was some really exciting stuff. And the people involved in this were very young developers. So it's allowing young people to get involved in this just as much. In Holland, the government has driven a couple of initiatives around commissioning apps and prototypes to do with school choice. And looking at there's quite a few being built around that. There was a whole series of competitions around that. Then things like I haven't got them up here, but I think I have got institute in Nairobi did pull together lots of performance data around Kenya certificate of primary education and stuff, and they allowed there lots of comparisons between different levels and various choice making around that. So some really interesting work going on there too. And just as there are sort of new use cases and examples coming out, there is still much more activity going on. The Open Data Institute in the UK have recently run an Open Data Challenge on education, which they've just got the results from that. They've got the winner. In Massachusetts, they've got loads of data hacking going on. In Stockholm, they've got data hacking going on. And I think, finally people are starting to see that there is so much potential in this space. So I just wanted to finish with a couple of questions. I think I wanted to emphasise that this goes beyond just performance data and just getting children into better schools. I think it's important to point out that the government open data reflects actual public policy. So what is variable is very different in different countries, and very driven by how open that particular government is. And I think you'll pick up on this when Octavio talks about some of the comparisons between the UK and Brazil. And then, but then also, you need to think about what sort of data should we be collecting? What do we need to collect for assessment in some way? And how should we evaluate this data? Because it's how we do that is key here. I mean, how we're making statements on what we value as a student or as a citizen when we kind of evaluate the data in certain ways. Can we bring more people into the debate? I mean, parents are a whole new community that maybe haven't been so much involved in the open data movement before. And